All right, this is the second episode of Comedy Catch-Up, and today we're just going to be talking about The Fighter and the Kid, the episode 426 with Will Sasso, as well as kind of just what's going on with the Fighter and the Kid show with Bryan and Brendon. I wanted to do a separate video, just try kind of like trying out different things, I guess. Why in the beginning stages of making these videos, right? So I want to just do a separate video. The last one was pretty long, so it might be kind of hard to get through a whole episode of just sitting there watching me talk about people talking about other things. So just do, and then there might be a lot of podcasts you don't want to hear about, so this might be a good way to kind of just break it down so you're only hearing about the podcasts you give a shit about. I don't know. Let me know what you think about this kind of format. And yeah, I mean, this is like a perfect episode to kind of break down by itself. One, because Will Sasso, in my opinion at least, is hilarious. Like one of the funniest people who's not a stand-up comic. Just one of the funniest people, like, period. I mean, the guy is just hilarious. His impersonations are so funny. Throughout this whole episode, he's doing these Alex Jones impersonations, like just going in and out of them, and it's just flawless. It's so spot on and hilarious. And I'll play a couple clips, and I'm sure their Fighter and the Kid are gonna put up a bunch of clips. Maybe I'll do it, but someone should definitely just make a compilation of all of them together, of Will impersonating Alex Jones, because I mean, it's definitely not as good as the Arnold bits. I think Arnold is his funniest impersonation, but this Alex Jones it's because there's so much context of him just ripping on Joe Rogan and Trump and a bunch of other people. It's hilarious. And kind of getting into some of the, I guess, like drama around Fighter and the Kid is, it seems like the Fighter and the Kid might be, I don't know, I'm curious to see if it sticks around here. Brendon launched a new podcast with Theo a few weeks back. They've put out 3 episodes so far, which is The King and the Sting. And it's basically it's kind of like the Fighter and the Kid, just two people who they've had great chemistry together on both of their podcasts. Which is really what kind of like launched their chemistry together is what really kind of launched Theo to the whole Guest of the Year thing for the last 2 years as well. Because they can kind of just really like just riff off of each other, and obviously Theo is the more talented comedian who can come up with better stuff like on the fly. Brendon's not really known for being that great at anything comedy related, but he has his moments. Let's not completely tear him down, but yeah, so you have this dynamic of now Brendon's doing a Fighter and the Kid, but with the newer, younger, funnier Bryan, right? He's got Theo now, and in last week of the Fighter and the Kid, they were talking about the show, and Brendon even brings up, like, hey, maybe you should bring back your old podcast that you did by yourself. And it seems like that's something Bryan has spent some time thinking about. He takes a phone call from his dad for like 10 minutes on the podcast, and it's extremely boring, and his dad is trying to be funny, and he's just not. In my opinion, I don't know. A lot of people online seem to really like it. I thought it was really boring, and just went for way fucking too long. Like, dude, come on. Like, Will's sitting there. Like, okay, come on. I showed up late, but now you're taking a phone call from somebody else. All right. But he brings up to his dad that, yeah, I'm starting that podcast again. I'm rebooting it. So if Bryan's going to go back to doing his old podcast, and now Brendon's moved on, he's got the Below the Belt thing where he does his MMA, which is that Showtime or it's owned by Showtime or whatever. So he's getting paid huge money to do that. He's got the King and the Sting. There's hundreds of thousands of views on those 3 episodes. I mean, I talked about it a bit in the last episode. I'm not a huge fan of the show. I think it's a little bit overdone. Kind of like how I don't really watch it anymore, but I watched like the first few episodes of the Below the Belt, and it was like really scripted at first and just like kind of just really dumb. And I think now he's gone back to like the regular podcast, like with notes, but kind of still stream of thought process, like what you see in podcasts and expect instead of just like scripted segments. So I'm hoping what the King and the Sting is right now, where they just have a couple of segments and they don't flow together, and they're kind of just overdone and they're a little bit hacky. Hopefully that changes up and it becomes something a little bit better. And it probably will, I'm sure. There's only 3 episodes in. Look at what a disaster this is so far. I'm sure this one will get better too. So who am I to judge? But yeah, I mean, so that really calls into question, if these guys are spending all this time on these other podcasts, they're burning up content on these other podcasts, right? They can't talk about the same things on both podcasts because they have the same fan base. So there's only so much you can talk about in a week, right? So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Does Fighter and the Kid survive? And the chemistry between Bryan and Brendon, it feels like it's really waning. This last year, it really felt like more so than before of Brendon just constantly taking jabs at Bryan, and I mean, that wears on. That's gotta wear on. Even if you're friends and even if you mean it as friends, or you think you're being a friend and just joking around, talking shit, every single time on the podcast, you're broadcasting out to all these people, all just talking shit, talking down to Brendon or Bryan every single time. Like, that's gotta wear on Bryan, on his mood and just kind of morale. And, I mean, he doesn't really bring it up ever, of course, on the podcast, but I don't know, you can just kind of see it just doesn't, they don't really seem as friendly as like with each other as what they used to be. So the tension is there. So we'll see how this plays out, 6 months from now. I think it's going to look a little bit different than what it does right now. But we'll see. And I mean, I think a lot of us would probably want to see like 10-minute podcasts come back, but that's never going to happen. So let's not even talk about that. Let's get back to the actual podcast with Will here. Will goes through the whole episode coming in and out of these Alex Jones skits, and it's hilarious. I'll play a couple here where he starts off in the beginning talking about gay sex and coffins, and Joe Rogan is just a shill for George Soros, and Google is evil. It's pretty good. And
we're in nature.
Yeah,
and that's where we, they're out there. They're in cloaks. They're in the forest, and these people are literally having gay sex in coffins.
Okay,
they're swimming in feces.
Okay,
these have to be?
Is this Alex Jones or is this?
And your friend, Joe Rogan, who's literally reading the George Soros talking points, and he said he'd have me back on the show. I don't need to be on his show.
Okay, well.
It's so great hearing Will playing the Alex Jones role and then tying it back into like real events with the whole, he said he was going to have me back on his show, and he never had me back on his show. It's like, well, yeah, I feel like he probably even talked about this. I mean, who the fuck knows? Obviously I'm not watching Alex Jones Infowars or whatever, but I don't know. Will is just hilarious, obviously. And then another one of him going in on Joe Rogan again here.
And your friend Joe Rogan, and Joe's a brilliant guy.
Yeah,
Joe knows as much as I do.
Amen.
And he's a well-read guy,
right?
And he's talking about DMT, and he wants to start a concentration camp.
No, I don't know. I don't think that's true. I've known Joe a long time. I don't know where
Joe Rogan lives up in Valencia, where he has a concentration.
He doesn't live in Valencia.
He has a concentration camp.
No, I can tell you that he
with George Soros.
That's not true. He doesn't even know George.
All right, that's enough. We don't need to hear the whole scorpion and the frog story. But I don't know where Will comes up with some of this, but God, what a fucking hilarious dude. So later on we get kind of something that we all kind of wanted to see is Bryan taunts him a little bit with, when are you going to start doing stand-up? This is what we all want as fans. We all want to see, more Will, regardless of the medium, I think, on a podcast or, a TV show is, you're playing somebody else. So for me, I've never seen Louder Milk, but I don't know. I want to see Will as Will, not Will as some random character on a TV show. That's just not, that's not as good. He's not really doing bits. He's not doing what he made his trademark doing, which is doing impersonations and skits and whatnot. But yeah, so Bryan kind of taunts him here a little
When
bit.
are you doing stand-up?
Oh, okay.
When are you coming on the road with me to do stand-up? Hey, guys, do you want to see Will Sasso come out on the road with me and do stand-up? Because I do. I bet you everybody does.
It would be fun.
This is the only
I've never done stand-up in a serious way because I'm not a stand-up comedian.
Well, you are.
And we've talked about this and the respect I have for the game. And there's people
Fuck off with your respect for the game. I don't.
People come up through the trenches.
So
people like
what?
people like you in New York.
Will goes into talking about the whole respect thing, and it's pretty funny. He takes some kind of low key jabs at Brendon. It kind of felt like where he's like, "Well, I don't do it because I respect the comedians, and they had to work for so long and so hard to get to where they are. It doesn't feel right for me to just already be famous, basically, and then jump in and be able to go and skip the line ahead of everybody else who's been putting in the work," which is exactly what Brendon did because, he's Joe Rogan's little buddy, so he got to start selling out shows everywhere instead of these guys and girls who, 15, 20 years before all of a sudden now you know who the fuck they are. Because now all of a sudden, after 15 years, they're on Netflix or Comedy Central or Showtime or whatever. Whereas, everybody I feel like anyone who watches this show kind of has a pretty good understanding already. So I don't probably need to go into too much of the whole Brendon backstory on all that. But it's kind of funny. Will takes a little dig at Chris as well for just kind of being a little I don't know, just not lazy, but it's your job is not really that crazy, is it?
I don't give a shit.
People like our good pal Chris D'Elia. You remember over a decade ago, Chris did 500 shows in 1 year.
Yeah.
But that's what he likes to do. He'd wake up and let's not paint him as a hero. He woke up in the morning and ate a turkey sandwich, and then he'd do a show at the Comedy Store and a show at the Laugh Factory.
That's his job.
Yeah, and then he'd go and have a restful
Chris is
sleep.
amazing at doing nothing.
Yeah.
He's amazing at doing only one thing. He's the most uncomplicated human being in the world.
There's a beauty in that. Yeah. And
coffee, sex, and comedy.
Coffee, sex, and comedy. That's what she calls it.
That is really true. It's Chris D'Elia's life is basically just coffee, sex, and comedy, right? Every episode of Congratulations Pod, it's him talking about how he went to the Coffee Bean, and then is just shitting on everybody for having hobbies. Basically, is the whole episode every time. This one's not really about him. So, also, Will does this hilarious impersonation of Theo Vaughn as well. I think there's a little bit of setup here.
So, Bryan and I were talking about, Bryan was being very generous. He said, why don't you come out on the road with me? And why don't you open with me? Why don't you try some shit out?
Yeah.
Now, I was just on one of your cohorts. He's over here, right? Theo Vaughn.
Well,
Yep.
he's
Where is he,
banging,
next
trying
door?
to entice him
Yeah,
to
but don't
bang as
knock
well.
on the. Just keep talking.
Well, he's banging on the fucking shit when he's.
I know, but
All right. Anyway.
just stick to
All right.
what you're saying, dude.
So and he was like, "Oh, why don't you try stand up, bro? You could be out there with a bag of potatoes, just being gang, and that's my Theo. I'm working
really
on
good Theo.
Yeah, you'd be out there with a bag of potatoes and a can of Cool Whip.
Yeah, that's good.
So,
yeah, I probably don't need to repeat all this. Every single thing he says, we all heard the joke. Did you notice Bryan's like his behavior though? Like while he's telling the story, he seemed off. Like the whole episode, he was really off and just kind of acting strange. I don't know if anybody else caught that, but it stood out to me. The whole episode, he gives off this like vibe of just being completely uninterested in what Will has to say, annoyed in just being there, being around Will, like for most of the time as well, and just goes off on these crazy rants. I mean, like, he always goes off on rants, but like he's like angry this time, like actually like really upset. Like, I don't know, something was off with Bryan on this day. It was really weird. They also go on to the current events, and they're showing a clip of Drake kissing this like 17-year-old girl on stage. And what's funny is that like, well, because he asks her, "How old are you?" She says 17, and then Drake's like, "Oh, you thick for 17." You know, it's like, this chick, she's saying 17. There's no way she's 17. She's saying that to make herself sound older, but like she's selling that thing, but she knows she can't sell 18 because she looks like she's 14 or 13. Like, she looks super fucking young. And so she's like, "I'm 17, you know?" And then, and Bryan is just like, "Oh, no." You know, after like Drake kisses her, after she tells him that she's underage, and Will reacts, you know, as most people would, like, "Well, that's kind of fucked up. Like, why would you do that? Especially on stage. Like, you're kissing an underage girl on stage after you just made a huge point out of saying why you gotta be 17 and look like that." So he knows it's wrong and he can't do it, and then he still does it. And Bryan's response is, "Well, I mean, you can't. No, he kissed her on the cheek. He can't. There's nothing wrong with this. Everyone's just being too sensitive." And he just gets angrier and angrier as it goes on. And it ends with him just going off on a crazy, angry rant.
Yeah, I love it. Disturbing video has surfaced. Shut the fuck up.
You really dislike.
It's not disturbing. It's
the media.
We live in a world where disturbing. There is some disturbing shit in the world, and people have to deal with some real shit in the world. And this is American bullshit. It's American bullshit.
But don't kiss her on the lips.
I don't think he did. It looked like he kissed her on the cheeky.
He kissed her cheek, forehead, lips. I
saw cheek again. I saw cheek.
The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, she'll be fine. Everybody will be fine. Shut the fuck up, all of you.
So that's the conversation.
Like, what? Refuse to be a part of it and fuck off. Like, saying shut the fuck up. Like, while Will's talking. It just seemed so rude and just like out of his normal like reaction, you know? I don't know if maybe that's because maybe like Brendon's not there, or maybe he's just having a really shitty Friday. But yeah, he was just, it seemed like Bryan was like way off base in this episode. And then they bring up the whole they go on more current events. They bring up the whole Jeff Bezos divorce that I'm sure most people have heard about. If you haven't, Jeff Bezos, richest guy in the world, cheated on his wife, and now they're getting divorced. She's going to be the richest woman in the world probably now. And then Bryan starts telling this story about how one of his friends knows Jeff and says that he's just the greatest person, you know? Here, I'll play the clip.
And he's supposed to be a great dude who actually is very, very keen on making the world a better place with all his money.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's really good.
I'm sure he's all about that, except making his warehouse workers, you know, have to piss in bottles, not having enough time to use the bathroom, not paying them competitive wages, shutting down factories when they try to get better benefits, firing people for just piss poor, shitty ass reasons. If you go back, New York Times did a huge article on just like how toxic and terrible Amazon is to work for. And I can tell you that it is very much still like that. And yeah, I mean, Jeff Bezos is pretty much just a huge piece of shit. So I don't know, by every public record, Jeff Bezos is the biggest piece of shit ever in how he treats other people. And so it's just kind of funny hearing Bryan talk about how great he is right after defending Drake for kissing a 17-year-old girl. Yeah. So obviously I have opinions on that. But yeah, I guess, I mean, like, there was one thing where he was like annoyed with that was kind of justified, in that they also brought up this current event of Beyonce getting sued because her website wasn't designed for people who are blind or just impaired in some way of seeing. And so what, like, the technology exists, it's called screen readers for what blind people use, or just people who can't really see very well. And the computer basically will read all the text on the screen to you. It's like an audio book for the internet. It's pretty cool. Apparently her site didn't work, and Bryan's like, well, what the fuck? Now we have to build websites for this too so we don't get sued? And he is right to be annoyed. That is a total bullshit thing, and I don't know how they expect that lawsuit to go through, but it won't. Even most really big sites, hey, like Amazon, for example, don't work for shit for screen readers. Also because a lot of content on pages is loaded up as images. You can't screen read an image. So if you have text in an image, blind people can't see that. So yeah, there's your tip for the day. If you're going to build a website, don't put text in an image because blind people can't read it. And apparently you get sued. Yeah, I guess, I mean, there's not really too much else to talk about on this episode. Kind of just wanted to cover the whole drama that I feel like is kind of stirring up between Brendon and Bryan, and where Fighter and the Kid is going, what the direction will be for this show over the next 6 months, if the King of the Sting continues to take off, and if Bryan's podcast launches, if he relaunches that podcast, and if that takes off as well. I think it's going to cause a real divide in the Fighter and the Kid and what kind of content that they will have still available to talk about. So yeah, that's all I got. Check back in. I'll have some more episodes and videos or whatever up next week probably.
Oh, that's annoying. Oh my God. Can you not bring an office-sized cooler jug of water?
Get a bigger chair.